We're live.
Excellent. Hello, world. We're back for another session of the Naiji Temple. It's me here, Naiji Coach, with me.
Naiji Mitchell.
Naiji Ben.
And Naiji Glenn.
Excellent. So today we have a few topics to get into. I'm not quite sure how long they'll be. This is kind of how we do it as Naiji. We just have things on our mind, we introduce them into conversation, and then we'll just have at it until the time is up. Naiji or friends, they typically do that. They'll just kind of meet and continue conversations that they've been having in process for some time, and they'll just do that until the world interrupts them, and they'll just pause and begin the next time they see each other. Okay, so these conversations here, I think all four of them that we're going to get into will be of that variety, that they'll be ongoing. So that's fun. It's fun to open them up. Okay, one is shape-shifting. That's an ongoing topic, but we got a little more into that yesterday in Niji's Temple briefly when we were talking about the process of how I shift from, say, voice work to purification work to editing or going on camera, so on and so forth. So I think there's a lot to that, and we can talk a lot about our experiences and ways to shapeshift and do it well, or obstacles and so forth. Next is being a detective team. It's a very good way for Naiji to see each other as friends, and there's a lot of media where you see these motifs. In TV shows, for example, that we're working a lot right now, you'll see a lot of detective team shows. And it's great because there's a lot of things we can study from that about how to properly do that. And it's great training for Naiji and how to be Naiji. Really, anyone who wants to work that, and so pretty much all the Nai Mojos. But the Naiji do tend to do it a lot. Then there's the topic of lots of repetition. Naiji don't tend to like to do lots of repetition with their V. Because that's like communing with Vi, and normally that's not our thing. But for our other, it can be very fun to do lots of unique repetitions. So we'll talk a bit about that process. And then finally, bring it all together, we can do some practical application and work some TV shows cases on the TV show timeline that right now I have heavily on my mind as a feat I want to do. I accomplished a major feat in putting together the single volume virtual village, 1,000 samples with our best representation of 32 gender mojos. Basically 20 to 50 samples each, as clean and as well known as possible. It's a pretty stunning artifact. Next, what I want to do is I want to make bridges where people who watch TV and movies later on can basically come to our library list and just check, look in all their shows and see the actors. And this requires me to go deeper. So it's fun. Guys will be involved now in kind of experimental process because I'm going deeper on these than I have before. But I think it's actually doable. So exciting. All right. So, with that, let's go ahead and get into it. Oh, we lost Glenn, but we'll get started anyway.
He's
Shape-shifting.
still sort of there.
So, on shape-shifting that's something that actually is kind of theme of the evening. Actually, you know what? I think the theme is the detective team. Because I think all the other things we're going to talk about can kind of go under that umbrella. I like when conversations like that. Okay, so actually start off with the detective team talking point. So shape-shifting, for example, is part of being a detective team because as a detective team, and also includes art. Because we often have mentioned how Naiji, for example, work together in the arts, but I've been thinking about it more. I think a detective team is a more inclusive umbrella of how Naiji work well together because artists working together on a project, they're basically detectives of the human condition. And so if you're actually trying to figure out, as Naiji martial artists together, there's a lot of, that you'll see that in dojos, they're basically also detectives of the human condition in their particular Kensei way. And, detectives on actual psychological shows and, murder mysteries like Elementary, same kind of thing is happening. So as a part of that, that includes, artistic detective work. It includes forensic detective work, kind of like life detective work. Because basically, psychology, which is popular in Naiji as well, it's also another form of being a detective. And Naiji, shrinks, I'm sure, like to hang out and talk cases to the wee hours.
Jung and Freud, maybe. Oh, I don't know who Freud was.
So on that, I guess three elements I want to talk about. One is sort of some principles. The other is shape-shifting, and the other is actually doing repetitions. Okay, One thing about Naiji is on the repetitions. I'm going to jump around a little bit and we'll just kind of hand over because I think it's probably better that way. I have like 4 points, but I don't really think there's any particular order here because it all is about being a detective team. So the cases can represent the other. I've mentioned before about how our other can be, transportation, it can be a land, it can be an activity or a career, accomplishment, awards, but probably like the ultimate really is a case, a mystery to work on. And so our other actually is often, will come to us even in personified form as a tease of a mystery to investigate and rewards that will come from being able to figure things out. So that's another one is that working detective cases, each one is a one-off. So that's one thing that is shared because Naiji like that when they're solo, is they like to do projects that are one-off because it's very exciting to kind of learn something new, to do something new. But you can actually use your other. They have a unique ability with Ni and Jai to get you excited to actually do Z and Vi. You don't know you're doing it. You'll just be excited doing Z-Vi reps. I mean Xi-V reps, but you'll actually be working up a lot of repetition in a given skill set, for example. So each case a detective team works on, that's like done on a group scale. So as a group, we kind of like are really working with our other. That's one thing that's kind of I think I've been kind of seeing more and more is like how the other is often represented as the case itself for the Nai Mojo, Naiji cases, and how, for example, like real world partners, like intimate partners, they have to compete for this muse that is the casework because it's just so interesting and sexy and appealing. And generally, for example, even like love encounters, even for the Naiji, that come as a part of working cases are the most profound and important relationships. Usually other ones are sometimes more awkward ones that get in the way of them doing what they really want to do, but they feel obliged to be social or whatever, but it's uncomfortable. But as far as relationships, they're like, yes, this is a relationship I can really get into. It's almost always linked with case solving. Usually they help solve cases, they are the case to be solved, or both, or back and forth.
Yeah.
And that count the others like that. Anyway, also mentioning the shape-shifting is that just like there's a certain form a painter gets into in order to make the next painting, the group, the detective team group, has to shape-shift as a team. Because if you're chasing, say, 2 or 3, whatever different kinds of case targets, you won't be able to get them all. It doesn't work well to use the same formation for each one. Does that make sense? You actually want to customize how the team would work it if you were working a case that was local, a case that was far away, a case that played to the strengths of Glenn, or a case that played to the strengths of Mitchell. If you would go in, as soon as you open the case file, you start noticing how that relates to the, so it's like an artist team, you basically come in, you see like, what can we do here with our talents to kind of maximize, turn this case over, get the best result. Anything else before I turn over you guys? Oh, on that shape-shifting, so like I said, you generally want to kind of hold the form. You may notice it's a theme in most of the detective shows that everyone on the detective team, they hear this from their real-world intimate peoples, that when they get in on certain cases, they shift how they are, and sometimes it's difficult to be around them, but it's just part of being a Nai Mojo, is that
I have heard lots of times you mentioned that.
You're going to be in this optimized form, and you'll be doing it now as a detective team as a group. We'll be in this optimized individually, and then as a concert force in order to stay on the trail. Anyway, pretty cool. Boom, 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 boom. Anything else? Yes. Is on shows or things out there as far as riffing on it is like Elementary. I really like Elementary in that it highlights the mentorship relationship more than the actual book did. It kind of gets into more how he transmits the information, and they're now getting like a tier system where they didn't really have in his original book, where he actually has people who are getting up to his ability and expanding it like it's a program. I like that. I'd like to kind of that like small scale, and then like Xavier on like a larger campus scale for like X-Men, and then on a larger scale still would be like a global think tank. Kind of like imagine like we're dealing with like I don't know Godzilla, which is like I'll say the mass stupid of our world. We can kind of see like Godzilla, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or some Leviathan rising up from the ocean is going to eat us. Our own stupid's going to eat us. So basically, those movies where you have like the best scientists, thinkers, investigative reporter, military people, whatever from around the world. The rest of the world, they're just like they don't know what's going on, or they're shrieking, and they're of no use whatsoever. Zombie apocalypse, whatever. So you have like this global network of people who have their shit together, and they actually stay connected and dialed in, and they actually save the day. So from a small elementary size where he's like doing the mentorship, like master to apprentice, apprentice journey. They have it right now in elementary. They have the 3 stages of classic master thing. It's like master, journeyman or woman, and apprentice. Sherlock is the master. Watson is now the journeyman or woman, and Kitty is the new apprentice. But then we have a full campus, a little more elaborate, with the X-Men, and then of course you have the save the world, where all the smart people who have a clue get it together and basically ignore everyone else for a little while because it's not very helpful. All right, so that's basically I think all the stuff. So let's just kind of talk at it as much as we want, and then whenever we've kind of said whatever we want to say, then we can get into actually doing it. We can actually work it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
So any thoughts on detective stuff, shape-shifting?
Oh, just any of those topics?
Yeah, detective teams, shape-shifting, how, for example, your other can make doing lots, like if I had to do 1,000 whatever, as soon as you tell me that in that way, it sounds really boring and horrible, and I don't want to do it. But like the knee can make you want to do cool V to impress it, and then it'll giggle, and then you want to do more to impress, and you just keep basically impressing it. So it's kind of like you're telling lots of jokes. That's how it feels. And so it just feels like a really great conversation. In the course of that, you're actually knocking out lots of high-level reps.
It feels like a lot lighter, like the amount of work you're actually doing.
Fun.
Yeah,
interesting.
A lot more fun. Yeah.
So, you guys have any thoughts on that? Have you seen detective shows where you've noticed any motifs or anything?
I really want to watch Sherlock. I haven't got to it, but because we just talk about it so much. But I did find it on Netflix. So.
I did. Just Sherlock and Elementary. Those are the 2 I'd recommend.
Yeah, I don't know if they have Elementary, but if they do,
They don't have Elementary. They do have.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Yeah.
That's cool.
You can watch Elementary on the link I sent you, though. Oh wait, I didn't send you that link. I don't know.
Well, if you do send me it, I'd be happy to.
I can send you a link where you can watch it.
Awesome.
Nice. I guess I'll start to talk some things out. You guys at this point jump in when you ever have things. I don't really.
Yeah. Well, I guess I had one little thing. It's just that one thing I mentioned it while you were saying it, but I can expand on it a little more. It's that we're talking about how Naiji have this sort of mode they get in when they're in detective mode, and it's like and I have heard lots of Naiji mention that. As like people don't want to be around them. Like actually, I was watching. There was a TED Talk where Brene Brown, of hers, mentioned like when she gets in her like researcher mode, everyone else has to like leave the house because they don't like dealing with her in that mode.
Yeah.
I can understand that too.
And that's actually what makes the, for example, the Nijai so unique, is that if they are well developed and know what they're doing and have a relationship with the Naiji, they can fly in and out in a way that doesn't bother, because they're really gifted at vibing what you need.
I know exactly what you mean.
Without asking for it. And just, a lot of times when I'm in researcher mode, I have thoughts like, I really wish I had some tea, but I don't want to get up right now.
No, they're so good at that.
And they just know. That's really awesome. It actually makes the researcher mode more powerful, more fun, and it lets you turn over that shape-shifting form faster and get into the next form.
It's like if someone else interrupts you in an Nijai, usually it will be to like tell you to do some like Z or Vi thing that like you need to like maintain your room
Right.
And that is so annoying for us.
Well, that'll just make that's beyond annoying.
And usually I just say like, yeah, I'll get to it.
If a Naiji's actually like properly pondering, then that to me is like that's a crime.
It really is. I get angry. It makes me angry to be interrupted.
You should. No, what I'm talking about is actually another degree. Just so that one's to me is like out and out crime. But the only question, I mean, that crime is actually a crime. Is a question of like, was it like premeditated or did you just do it accidentally? But either way, that's wrong. That was wrong. The other one is when they are trying to be helpful. But a lot of times they don't know what to do, or they ask for use, like they don't just know how to do it.
Right.
And so it's like they mean well, but you're like, just still, you're nicer than the other person, but still, get out. Like, no hard feelings, but you get out too.
I know. I'm totally.
Slow me down. At that point, love is very closely associated with, can you help me with this case?
Yeah.
And there's a point where
And if you can't, then you should leave.
you should leave. You should leave. That's just the rules. See, this is cool. We're talking about rules. One day we should really write a book because I'm part of the Naiji Temple. These are the rules. These are the rules. You know?
The Naiji rule book.
And that's rule number one. Like if
Infraction
you're not helping with the case, then why are you here? And that's what makes it so awkward for Naiji, because we do have G. But it's like, even though I love a person, that, like, to me, as an IG, if I'm doing my job heroically, so I am doing like a higher way and I'm exerting myself properly, if that's going on, then love should work to where it's helping me go forward. But a lot of times the way people try to help out or bond with you, it's not actually helpful. But the Nijai, they're used to actually how Naiji roll. You know what I mean? The extremes of it. And they can get, at first they may get freaked out, but once they actually see a particular Naiji and they know that they have good code of conduct and they feel safe around it, they actually pride themselves on having like a freakish ability to be quite upbeat. Not unflappable, like they're actually upbeat and content and humming along while dragons are actually doing freaky stuff, as long as they feel safe with you. But no one else can really do that. I guess really only at some point it's in the Jez. It's a Naiji who were on the detective team. I think you also could have Nijai as well, because I think Naiji and Nijai, you have the ability for like just total mind meld. You know what I mean? I don't need to speak. You can see what I'm doing, and you can just get involved with it.
I so value that. Yeah.
Because a lot of times it's just like people they're out and out rude to that way. Their next level is they're not rude, they are clumsy,
right?
Which still hurts just as bad, at least it's not insulting. And then there's the ones that are trying to do good, but they just don't know what they're doing, and so it just slows you down. But then you have, as emojis get closer to you, and even certain other emojis that are far away can really be good for you for periods of time. And that's part of like developing proper relationships also, is not all relationships are supposed to be with, say, a certain person where you do everything with them everywhere. You know what I mean? And so, once you kind of realize, like, I can do certain things to certain people, then you're good to go. But that gets back to the case working. People who work cases with the Naiji are going to be able to hang out with the most amount of the Naiji's life activities.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If there's certain part of case working, like when it comes to, like, I don't know, doing autopsies on amoebas, and I have a friend who's really into that, then we'll bond on that. And whenever that comes up my casework that we need to, do an autopsy on an amoeba, I call that person up and we really have a great time.
Oh, man.
And that's how
conversations.
That works well. That works well, and you don't try to force a relationship other than when it comes up in that natural way. I'm sorry, Ben. I didn't mean to cut you off. What you were saying?
No, I was just amused at like speculating the kind of conversations that would actually come from that particular case report.
like
how Naiji would actually geek out over something like that.
It seems like
whoa, that amoeba kind of looks like a unicorn.
Goes there.
But I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Okay. So if we don't have anything else, then I'll just sort of start talking some general principles. I'm going to kind of start mentoring you guys on this, because I was also trying to think of a good way to like really bond you guys strongly. And for me, it's, as you guys know, it's case working. So, being the more we are like a tight case working team, that's the more we're going to share like the most strong, intimate, heightened headspace. Okay, so for myself, these are just some things good to know when working a case. So we go in. Obviously, what makes us great as NIG is our NI, so abductive reasoning. So a lot of times, you kind of just look at the first things that come in from the case in a large picture way, and then just let whatever comes to you come to you. And it can be nothing, or it can be something that seems kind of like unrelated, or it can just be like a little sliver curve of you don't know what yet. Anything at all, it's totally fine. And this is something a lot of times NIG keep to ourselves. This may feel a little weird at first, but I think we're really, really good. It's basically kind of talking out our detective of the human condition process. Because what we do all the time, so I think it would be really strong to do it together. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Makes
Okay.
total sense.
So for me, generally when I first approach a case, I think the best things to do is to put yourself in a quasi-state similar to Moja reading. Because I didn't really start out my life Moja reading. That just sort of happened along the way. But I learned things from my parents, for example, both NIG. My dad did a lot with law enforcement, and detective work. So he, taught a lot about going into a place or a situation, and without necessarily telling people, you just immediately do not agree to anything that has been agreed upon before you showed up. It's a good mindset to have as an IG, while being very sensitive to what data tells you. So when data tells you things, that's exciting, that moves you, but otherwise you come in a state of don't let the first wave of energies, for example, move me. Observe them. Don't let them throw me. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah. I thought for a second you were saying you must disagree with them. I'm like, what if they're right?
No, exactly.
Yeah, but like, okay, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I got.
Yeah, this is actually more of an internal
Clarification
process.
makes sense.
I'm glad you mentioned it because I want to clarify. This is actually more of an internal process where when you are presented with information, you're going to get energy from them, and it's going to hit you. And we'll see this today when we work the cases. When we actually see the way they style the interviews, the way the poster art is, it may remind you of something. You may have actually seen that movie or something. Anything of that like, it'll actually have an impact on you. You want to register what those impacts are.
But don't let it like decide your course of action.
Exactly.
Like right away. Like really let it sink in. Sleep on it first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like
Because I know what that's like. Like if you're gonna go out and you're gonna like you're in a store or something, it's really compelled to want to like buy it, but maybe you don't really need it. Maybe it's just the marketing that's kind of like captured your interest and you don't even realize it.
I like
You need to
that
back
word.
up and-
I like that word because there's like with Mazoots, for example, there's a lot with marketing, and so when people communicate with you, they're marketing an idea of the way the case is supposed to be or is going, or what is likely to be the correct course to take. Does that make sense? And so you want to listen to it without being swayed, and let just sort of your spirits, the natural law of it, your simulator will take what you're hearing and it'll start running simulations, and it'll start getting what it feels could be likely scenarios, and you want to actually let that sort of shine through. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's usually like a very faint voice that you need to kind of like allow to hear by maybe sleeping on it, like maybe finding yourself laying down in the bed. It's like, like that kind of thing, right?
Indeed. That, and also, this gets another point as well, is you also want to be very astute and attentive, because clues could be happening any moment. So there's a heightened energy, and you want to bring your V here, Nile and a V, when you're on any kind of media source. So if you're looking at a book that's relevant, if you're looking at slides that are relevant, if you're at the crime scene, if a witness is now being presented to you. If you want to see this, look, for example, as an IZ, but does a very good job showing this. Johnny Lee Miller from Elementary how he can look sort of laconic sometimes, and then or even just kind of fidgety. He'll look laconic or fidgety, bored, and then he'll become riveted on something, and his energy becomes very heightened, and he's like on point. That's generally something as a detective you want to have, is whenever there is a possibility of high value information, you want to make sure you like open up your lens and like click, 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 click. You mean basically like start clicking away mental pictures and take up a lot of space, because it's more important. The rest of the time, when you walk around normal life, you kind of spend it a lot sifting through the high value information that you got at those individual points. Do you mean when you're talking to a witness or whatever?
One thing, Coach, a lot of times I notice that kind of thing, like the interest, like you kind of perch up or whatever, that kind of just happens on its own in a way. Because then you like you might hear like a conversation, like a topic that's being discussed, and you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Actually, I was working on a case relevant to that. Otherwise, it's sort of like, okay, I'm just gonna sit back and wait until something comes along. That's
good.
Like that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. You'll sort of.
And we're talking about a very.
There's also another thing, which is trying to make yourself interested in something when it's kind of not so immediately appetizing, in not necessarily in a V way, but in a sort of like interest way.
Right. But for Naiji, if it seems like it might have something to it, that will give it interest. But if not, then the abductive reasoning has not been tickled yet. But before we move on to that a bit more, I want to touch on talking about the yin and the yang. Here we have the need to do a process. It is yang, but it can seem yin because you need to sort of, say, hold yourself apart or follow a trail that may be interesting to you, but often for Naiji, the trails that are interesting at first, we couldn't explain to you why. All hunters are good at being detectives and are kind of geared that way. If you ask a VIZ detective, why are you going over there? You're like, well, we flagged the phone records and these 3 numbers came up with an inordinate number of calls as compared to all the others from that area. You're like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? Like, and so they can, as hunters, VIZ are the best equipped to explain to people, why do you need to drive all the way out to Arlington today? Do you know what I mean? And if it doesn't pan out, that's fine, but they can kind of explain why the flight had to go like that. The other hunters, it's a little harder for VIZ because it's G, Nai-Z because it's Nai. Nai-G is the hunters with the hardest time explaining why we would very much like to go down this alley, or why I need to look at this painting or that book, or I need to Google this or that. Mm-hmm. So basically, and this is a theme of Nai detectives and detective teams, is that you're going to have to produce results. And by doing that, you prove that your method works.
Kind of like the feet thing.
Yes, very much so. And this is important. This gets back to kind of like what you were talking about, Glenn, about like being kind of voyeuristic or pursuing something that may be very interesting to you, like a certain conversation, but you don't know why. It just is. A theme we see a lot. With Nai-G, Nai-Z, NG, Nai, all the detective heroes we see on TV, for example, it's a form of being dominant where you have confidence that you know what you're doing and you can get good results, so they're going to have to allow you to kind of feel it out. Basically, let me feel it out. And taking up, that's kind of yin to yang thing I was talking about, which is you kind of command the right to let me feel it out. It's kind of like an artist. It's very much like being a detective and artist are related in that you know I've done good artwork before, but like a lot of artists that can do like sculpting and painting, whatever, they don't know what they're going to do yet. They'll talk about this. They'll actually just approach the idea they want to get into. They want to get some sort of commemoration of something that they're into, or whatever. And they kind of just let it be whatever it's going to be, and then they choose the medium, and they choose what kind of parameters they're going to go with, but not before then. So anyway, there's that, I say, artistic confidence. There's a what an artist has is basically the power of speculation. I've actually had an urge to put an idea out in some form before. I followed that urge, and it made something I was proud of, and maybe at some point later on impressed other people. So detective is very much the same thing. It's speculation. So all Nai heroes have to basically use the fact that they know they can do something that they don't know what it is yet.
Yeah.
And so having a confidence about that. That's why it's very important for Nige to kind of go Keynesian and stuff so they can do some speculating and see if they can be successful at it.
It kind of like reminds me of like some of the stuff you talk about, like superpolar Vi. How like the way that Nige need like those kind of we can do amazing things, but it's so hard to explain, and we need people to kind of give us space and to do things in a way that to normal people just seems so weird.
Mm-hmm. For sure, and that's
so,
why. Yeah, please.
Nige will do stuff where like they'll to get around doing Vi, even just for example. We'll do amazing feats of memory and really impress people, so they think we have a really good memory, even though really on most things, I mean, we might have a really good memory on some things, but like most things, it's not there almost at all. And so
right.
not
I think
attention to that.
It's because we focus on something very specific that we're really into to actually gain really good memory.
Exactly. And that's what people see. They see you like reciting something that you read in some medical journal, and then it seems like, wow, this person must know a lot about like, this kind of stuff. But really, all they know is that one thing about that one topic and that one, like, you know. And then everything else is just sort of like, I don't know, I never.
Oh, have you seen Daniel Radcliffe, the dude from Harry Potter? Like on Jimmy Fallon, he did he did alphabet aerobics, and that was like a really staccato, like fast-paced, like really memory tense, heavy.
Nige can really impress me with our memories. They can be like really specific.
Yeah, and he talked about how he would like learn how to rap all these tongue twister like songs like really quickly.
You know, you expect to see some stuff like that after I get my L10 on the track too, because that's fun. It's just fun to do. Back in the streets of Baltimore, I'm telling you, it's just
like
it's
you can
fun
double
to do.
stack that so much.
It's intimidating. It's seductive, and it leaves people dazed. They're like, as far as like intimidating people, to be able, and this includes actually like I'd say even academics that are actually powerful have this ability to jump all over interdisciplinary stuff, connect it, and do so with wit. If you can do that, those connections into everyone's field, make it make sense, do it quickly with wit, it scares the shit out of people.
Yeah.
And Nye and Nee that's why they rock a comedy. They rule at that. It's very difficult to keep up that kind of speed and cleverness. I was like that, but I was just.
Yeah, I feel like that's where a lot of rap actually comes from. It's just like, just really lyrically, artistically, witty strings of words.
That is something I really admire actually about some of like the Nige rappers I've seen. Just the way they say stuff. Very cool.
Yeah.
That's just. I think that's just natural for being like kind of like a bard. That's like rappers are basically just like street bards. I mean, it's just I think it's natural. And it's fun. It's very empowering. I know for myself that growing up in Baltimore that I didn't really feel good about an idea I would have until I could actually voice it in a public area. There's a tremendous amount of power to know that, I mean, assuming unless you're to come over and actually like try to beat me up, which is, by the way, why I got to go to grappling. I actually, seriously, because people also would often comment that I didn't really conduct myself like that. For a person who was as good as I was, generally you would wear T-shirts all the time, you know, announcing the kind of dude you are. I never did that. And they're like, why did you do it? Why have you become so good at this? And the reason was I want to be able to say what I want to say. That's why. I want to be able to look at what I want to look at, think the thoughts I want to think, and speak what I want to speak to who I want to speak it to and not have to fear the reprisals. So it's Nige. Naturally, you want to be able to say what you want to say with power.
Right.
I mean, you just do. And so, but assuming, leave out the physical thing, and so obviously you have to watch out where you go as an IG. Part of being revolutionary, as you may have known, is you generally want to be very aware of your surroundings. But if you're just talking about an actual exchange between ideas, if you know that no one can actually talk you down, as an IG, that might be the sweetest feeling ever. And by the way, it makes our other the most attractive to us, is when we actually have picked a really big idea a lot of people can't understand, and a challenging position with it heroically that a lot of people just wouldn't take. And you're going to take this big idea with a very heroic, challenging position, and you're going to make that happen. You're going to sway people.
It's like, yeah.
And basically you're like, and that's just why we do all kinds of rap and other things like that, but it's not just in music. You'll see them do it in debating and other things. It's like, how much power can I give my ideas with my words? Given the amount of time, given the media I have, you know what I mean? That's why I make movies and such. It's like, I want to make my point.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it sucks not having your point being made.
I feel like
That's
more
I think
rap
like the
needs to
grappling
be, like,
why you
that,
got into that.
Perspective.
I'm sorry, Ben, can I hear the end of Glenn's thought, and then I'll hear yours also.
Sure thing.
Well, I was just saying that you want to be able to say what you want to say, and if you feel like if you can't have that, then it really sucks. And so like I'm just like reiterating what you said about like the grappling, like you learned how to do that so that you could say what you wanted to say, and that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of like you didn't want to do that.
No.
You wish you could have like avoided that, but it seemed to be that that just seemed like something that you needed to do because of the way the.
At the time, it's what I needed to do.
Yeah.
I would have preferred. I'm glad you bring it up. If I had my preferred option, which by the way is how Podler got here, you guys are the preferred option. I would have preferred to have a tribe around me that would support me and defend me, and so I could just speak my mind without worrying about jackasses trying to take my head off for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I mean. At the end of the day, if you're going to really say what you want to say, you need to have a support system. Which is like next he's like, you have to do this publicly. I'm like, I don't want to, but he said I would need a support system really, because she's like, if you're like a black belt, you can only do so much with that. If you get people really upset, a black belt will not save you against a whole tribe with pitchforks and torches.
Yeah.
Or other things.
How good you are grappling. It's like,
No.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and it feels really good to have like someone support you. It's like you're thinking about something as some troll kind of like is talking to you, and then your friend or somebody that cares about you and understands your idea, they'll be like, hey, no, but that doesn't work like that because this and this and this. And it's like, yeah, I was gonna say that, but it actually
so much more power. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels really good, and it feels really. I'm like, it's really awesome to have that because it's sort of like, yeah. He or she made a really good point. Now let's see what this troll has to say next.
Right.
Cool.
Because I want to have both sides of it, which is being able to control the environment, but then I want a fair exchange.
Exactly.
I want a fair fight. Grappling is one of those sports because it's one-on-one so intensely and it goes by weight class and a bunch of other stuff. You don't get into that if you don't enjoy taking on another person who's going to really make your life hard. So I like that. One thing I learned from that is if you want to have a very strong mind, you have to learn to embrace the grind, to enjoy challenging waves, enjoy challenging climbs. That's why Naiji like that. They like grappling, hiking, surfing, but you learn there's a pleasure in pushing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And when you have that, you know that you're good. You know that you are capable. And so you like a fair competition. Go ahead, let's have a fair debate. But when you actually have a new idea that's in a controversial opinion, you have a hard time getting fair fights. I can tell you as a Caucasian in Baltimore, this is not racist, this is just true. I have lots of black friends who would tell me, I mean, it's just a thing. It is what it is. I don't think I've ever had a fair fight. It just, because the environment doesn't favor me. It just, you know what I mean? So generally speaking, you have to import kind of like your own crew. And I did. Actually, ironically, most of my friends were all black. But still, I would bring a support system with me so that I could demand a fair exchange. Otherwise, I'm not going to get a fair exchange because unless one-to-one I would, because I'd always pick good people to go up and talk to and make friends with. But law of statistics is if you actually have more than like 5, 10, 20, 50 people in a given proximity, it's easy to make fun of me. I'm white. You know what I mean? I'm an easy target if there's an asshole. You guys are not stupid. You live in the world. If you get 100 people, what's the chances that it's not going to have an asshole in there?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I mean, let's be realistic
There
here.
won't be at least one.
Yeah. So I actually, most of my time growing up, I had good friends around me to help me out with those things. But the fact was, it was a thing that needed to be dealt with. But it trained me well. I learned that actually going in and dealing with different spiritual model leaders, I would sometimes talk with them. You had to get them when they were at banquets. I had a whole kind of thing I would do. I would jump different people I would have conversations with, but I would never do it where they were at, because if you do it in their classroom, you'll never get a fair shake, because they're just going to say that you don't count, and you're done. So you have to get somewhere where they have to, like, the tribe's looking at them, and it'll be awkward to not give you a fair exchange. Yeah. So you want to be able to demand a fair exchange, and you want to be able to excel when given a fair chance. Given a fair chance, you will shine. Does that make sense? So you train yourself to shine when given that opportunity, and then you do have to sometimes make the world give you that opportunity.
And I think that's. I was going to say, I think that's where a lot of where Naiji can get really angry at other people sometimes, because if you aren't actually given that opportunity, it can get, the code of conduct can kind of get, like, of what you should actually do, kind of it's hard to actually work with, because
dicey.
While you really want to say what you need to in full strength, if someone isn't working with you on that, you need to in some way make the right call, and that may be completely ending the conversation.
Yeah,
that
you might
be just saying it anyway if they're being completely unreasonable.
No, exactly, but it's not ideal. You have to, like, ghost walk or go more aggressive than you wanted. You know?
Yeah, and then oftentimes the person is usually just really stupid, and they're not really interested in what you have to say anyway.
Yeah.
And they're just not going to make it easy for you to in any respect, because they're like diametrically opposed to you in some respect, and what you're trying to do is kind of be like, no, but we can do it this way. They're like, no, I don't want to do it that way, and if you talk to me about this again, if you even mention this, then boom, like then they're going to attack. But that's how it can sometimes feel. And so it's like, how do you navigate this kind of ridiculous...
Yeah. I mean, it's like one thing if it's like some stranger on the internet who you've never met. Another thing if it's like someone that you're actually a good friend with, and yeah.
Yeah, it gets
dicey.
dicey.
If it's some stranger, I don't give a shit. I'm just gonna... like I didn't have a harmonious. Well, I didn't have any real connection to begin with, so it's.
Right.
Yeah, it's really hard when it comes to like family members and like really close friends. Yeah, and that's kind of like where I speak from usually, because. But yeah. Totally.
Yeah, that's also something too, is that it's complicated for the Naiji, but you need to do it. Is figuring out what you believe in and what you want to be doing with yourself, and then be able to express it. Because when you talk with family, there'll be a whole set of things for that. And when you talk to strangers, a whole set of things for that. And then colleagues or professors, yada, yada, yada. And so that's why a lot of people don't want to do it, and they take the lazy way out, because when you go an unprecedented route, a nigh route, truly, you have to do everything from scratch. You have to play detective on, like, how does one, like right now, so I'm doing it with the baristas and so forth, I'm figuring it out. I'm doing it with you all now. I'm like, how do I have a dragon fleet with Podlair Naiji this way? And so it's exciting too. But it is kind of a mystery you're solving.
Yeah, so it's you try out ideas, and then you see if they work, and if they don't, then you have to like adjust. And the learning process is actually something that I greatly enjoy. The gradually kind of getting there, gradually just like, oh, like I'm training, I'm getting better. This is like I'm making like little logs, and it's like, oh, this worked and this didn't. I wonder why that is.
I did. I probably would have naturally chosen a different route than martial arts, but I mean, when I finally got into it and I got really good at it, I did enjoy certain aspects of it, and that was one of them. I really liked kind of like, that was a hard thing there. How that way? I did little journals. You know what I mean? I was a geek about it, but it was fun. It actually, I enjoyed it. People actually mentioned, like, why do you actually train on the mat before anyone gets here, and you're like the last one to leave, and then you take notes? Like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, I don't find anything else as much fun.
It's just interesting, right? I mean, and you're fed. And
if you're trying to figure out how to get somewhere, just figuring out that case, anything that you actually think might help with that, that's just really interesting. Anything that's it's just really not interesting, and it is so hard to fake it. Oh goodness.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you have that case that you're working on, it makes everything easy. It makes everything so that it's like possible. Because it's a different mindset entirely. It's
Just
not like,
through everything.
oh, I'm gonna go over to like this gym and do this kind of stuff and then whatever. It's like, I want to figure out like how to get to this place and how to do that, and what does it take to do that? And then you kind of like try out different things and you see.
That's how it be. Totally.
That's how it works. Right? I mean, that's like the.
We're trying to talk, and we're also talking about how when you do the process, having your other is so important because that's what I was talking about when you kind of like grinding lots of repetitions. That's how you had to have that headspace. Otherwise, it's just too boring.
You wouldn't really have the motivation or the strength to actually do that if you didn't have that. Like
You do have
it
that.
wouldn't feel
You
like
have,
there's
like,
actually like a point in actually completing that feat otherwise. For you.
Like one thing that would happen all the time. Like I'd get like a move I was working on, is Nexie would be like, okay, we always like she'd see it to where it would like stack whatever school I happened to be training at or doing at, where who was the easiest person to do it to up to the hardest, and I would just like keep doing it to different people, so it became a video game. So it wasn't like I was doing the move in say 100 repetitions in like 100 different matches, which I was.
Right. It was like testing yourself.
Okay, today is Ted. I beat Ted. Yes. Okay, that means tomorrow it's Dan. And it actually came like a strange grappling video game. And that was fun.
And then it was interesting because you were probably thinking like, I wonder how Dan is going to stack up against me. I wonder what he.
Yes. The Naya of how's he going to stack up as far as being able to pull off the puzzle of pulling it off on him, and then the G of the reaction. Like, I cannot believe you just did that to me. You know what I mean? And some people were like, I usually train people I liked. I didn't train people I didn't like, so it wasn't like I wouldn't like make them feel bad. But like, we would like to do new moves on each other, and it's cool when you have friends like you guys that like to do new stuff to see the delight in their eyes of like, that is slick. There's no greater compliment when you do a cool move from an IG and they go, oh, I'm doing that. Just so you know, I'll be using that in my next match. That's like, yes, I definitely am doing something good.
Yeah, imitation is the greatest kind of.
I bet Naiji, like in grappling and other like fighting activities, could really be down like naming their own moves and stuff, creating like new.
Just that's a huge deal. You'll see a lot of the artistic kind of ego of Naiji, ironically, in what you just talked about. They'll invent moves, and if you actually like say that was your move, like, oh, that's the Carlson move. No, it's not. That's the Ryan move. It's like, who actually made the lyrics of some famous song? That shit gets
create like your own style, like the dragon bird fighting style or something.
Because it is a work of ingenuity. It's a work of creativity, and you found it a way that like gives superior advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of like you were peeling away the layers, trying to figure out how to do this thing, and then you did it, and then you were the first person that ever did that.
You're the one that figured that out.
And actually, like, it's interesting because, like, if you're actually doing fighting moves, just the act of doing something really cool and interesting, artistic, it doesn't even have to be very effective on the mat. It could just be really cool looking.
One's the naming thing. The other one is Naiji, and the more so, the stronger the Naya is. They like to find the freakiest ass move that you can actually make work for real.
Yeah, they're
just those eyes go. You are not trying to do a crane kick from Karate Kid on me. And by the way, Naiji Lyoto Machida did the crane kick on Vizi Randy Couture, one of the best fighters ever. He crane kicked him right in the chin.
Did he win by that one?
Yes, he did. And another one who did the same one was I didn't crank it, just front kicked him right in the head. Like, you're like, no one does that. It's like out of a movie. It was Anderson Silva, Naiji, Vita Belfort. He walked out and just one kick. They basically found each other out for a little bit, like no touching, and then he just snapped him right, and that was it. One hit, and the fight's over. He just crumples. You're like, that's out of a movie. No one does that for real.
Right.
The actor is like, I trained that. Like, he trained specifically to like dodge, kick. And it works, and makes everyone like, he's like a Jedi.
I know. There was this one move that he did. Actually, he just like elbowed the guy in the face, and then he dropped, and then he won. It was like the most. It was like it was so simple that it was just like brilliant. It was like like, yeah, that's what you do. Like, that's what he was just thinking. You're just like, okay, I'm just gonna elbow, and he was probably just like, I'm gonna try this out, see if it works.
See what happens.
It worked, and just like boom, because it comes from having all that knowledge to begin with, and like the ease, kind of like you've done this so many times.
And this gets back into kind of we talked about like the sort of confidence that a Naiji detective has, which is you're like, I have confidence in my predictive speculative abilities.
Yeah,
What you're talking about, real quick, Glenn, is an aspect of that, very much related, is the confidence. You see a lot in MMA in I'm creative. Naiji, who are like badasses, they lord their creativity over the opponent. And they'll actually make freaky exchanges comes up because they're like, I can make the fight get weird. It can get weird, it can get artistic, it can get freaky. We can do things that don't normally happen to fight, and that's going to mess you up, not me. And they often will do that on purpose, and they'll scramble the other fighter's brains by just doing patterns they don't see. Pretty cool.
It's like, can you handle this? You know,
Yeah,
like,
exactly. They do.
Yeah.
It's funny. And you know, you actually stood a little bit there, Glenn. That's usually where it starts. They usually start it in the very beginning with feinting, and they start feinting. And if you're a trained fighter, when a person rolls their shoulder a certain way or ducks their head or whatever, you kind of know, oh, that is either a certain move or an imitation of it. But what the Naiji will do is they'll start kind of like a dancer. Left foot here, right foot here, and now we get freaky. And they'll like start doing all these like intricate feints, and you can see the person's eyes start like, "What are you doing?" And then that's when they kick.
There's like a syncopated rhythm to like.
It's really neat to see.
It's cool, and it's really cool to be in that kind of mode. You do feel really slinky. You just feel like, yeah.
Whoa, I'm an alien.
Yeah, that's definitely true for everything. I know this true for tennis too.
Yeah, for sure.
Like Roger Federer, one of the best players ever, he's known for being able to hit these just shots that just no one else would even go for. Like he wins the point. The shot wasn't even so good that it should have been a winner, but the fact that he hit that shot, they couldn't get it. It was like, what?
What?
Like Michael Jordan too. Like
Michael Jordan.
Tennis. I'm like Roger Federer, and I'm gonna look up him. I'm gonna see what you're like, learn more about him too, because I want to understand.
Drop shots. He's hit shots between his legs and stuff.
Yeah. I had a little bit of that when I was playing badminton back in high school. A little bit. I kind of got into it for some reason. It's just kind of really interesting. But definitely, like, there's like basketball players I usually watch too that I used to watch a lot. And Michael Jordan was one of them, where he would just do these really crazy shots and do these kind of pull off these incredible moves, and he always just felt like at ease, and I just like really enjoy that. I enjoyed watching him fly.
No, it's true. And one thing is, and this is what Naiji have to mature this, and this sometimes you'll hear them get into kind of push and pull with other people and teams, particularly when they're like say Vizi or Zenai coaches. is the Naiji need to be artistic, but also to like play properly on a team with other people. So that's a balancing act.
Basketball, I've seen that in. I've seen like Kobe Bryant complained. He'll like be a coach sometimes, where he'll like kind of take over.
Yeah.
Like, do this.
I would think that would be less of an issue when it comes to solo sports, though.
Oh yeah.
But I think maybe it would still be something that you need to take that into account, because you can't just be like, I'm gonna, just forego eating properly or doing the proper kind of training
responsibilities.
That needs to be there as a foundation.
Right. But yeah, I agree. But actually, it usually is not even like a bad habit necessarily. It can just be part of the process that may be difficult with other team members. And this relates to Nai and Ji as momentum directive powers, and Z and Vi as modulation directive powers, which is both Durams share this. They really can do some exceptional things with their ingenuity and their ferocity if they can dial it in. And kind of Xi and V is how they dial it in. So it's that dialing it in, and sometimes that may involve like working with a team. That's actually more of an issue for the Naiji, but it's there also. And what is, both Durams take great pleasure from kind of like swaggering with natural law. Like, it's just fun to ride a wave and then just enjoy it and just make it look good and have fun and own it. And there's all these kind of elements to it, and it makes the Durams excel at a huge variety of sports. And one of the things they have to kind of sort of curb, but it's a huge part of why they're so great. They want to show off. The Jinai tends to be more, they want to show off unprecedented feats in front of other people. The Naiji sometimes less to other people, but they still want to show off for their spirits. They'll make dangerous calls, because I do. Next he's like, ooh, it'd be really cool if you climbed that certain mountain. That's dangerous. It may even be strategically not the smartest thing to do. But she would be impressed if I did it. It's hard for me to wave off that.
I feel like there's got to be a lot of Naiji in sports. Like,
I would agree with that, Ben.
Of course, there's a lot of, I think there's evil and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And this gets back to why Naiji breaks so many feet sometimes, is because to be able to kind of like be doing some activity with natural law like that to such a degree that your others like, yeah, you'll a lot of times do things that might be incorrect. So, for example, both Durams are known for doing this. They do flashier, more wild moves than other people do. Downside, what's not dialed in, like Bai Zi and Bai Ji, they kind of just go pew 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 pew. They kind of just, surge in your ass. You know what I mean? Because you're a little too sloppy. It's a little too sloppy, and it doesn't like come when you call on it like it needs to. And so that need to do these kind of like more exceptional, unusual, creative things, it initially can create like a performance burden on just pure Z-Bai standards.
I know what you mean.
Because, for example, here I'll take a classic one. This is classic. There's a Z-Bai to how you train someone to do a double leg takedown. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
And if you were just talking in a vacuum without peak pathways, that probably is the most efficient way to train like just pure ergonomics. You know what I mean? Okay.
Yeah,
however,
that makes sense.
No Duram does that. No Duram does that. They almost all do the same thing. They watch a tape or video of some wrestler, grappler, MMA fighter, whatever that they think is some kind of god. And they're like, I want a double leg like them. It's always that mindset. Someone that they think is just awesome, and they try to walk like them, talk like them, double leg takedown like them. And so a lot of times Durams will talk about this is like, whose games do they try to emulate? Who's got a build or personality that's like theirs? And they'll try to actually like be like them, and then eventually maybe better than them.
Oh, this really is so heavily shape-shifting.
It is, very much so. But anyway, yeah. I was just saying that, yes, it is. For us, the phenomenon I'm talking about includes the shape-shifting, but for the Jinai, it's a little less so. But you're right. It basically is talking about pushing yourself to pull off a natural law feat in front of whatever you consider to be the highest audience. A lot of times, Naiji will be on a mountaintop with their other looking at them. That's fine. The point is, someone's looking at you, but why is you looking at you like that? It's because you saw some movie hanging out with a hero doing something on a mountain. Your other's like, that's fucking cool. Then one day, 20 years later, you see a mountain, you're like, you look at your other, she looks at you, you're like, you know what we're doing today? And it's like, that's not strategically fun. I don't care. We're doing that.
We got all the things set up now. Let's just do it.
It's funny. Just thinking about that. Okay, you watch like that movie late at night, and then like you're kind of in your simulators. You're falling asleep. You fall asleep. You wake back up. All right, guess I got to climb that mountain now.
Exactly. That's how it happens. And so once the Naiji or Durams in general, but they do that, it's huge amount of energies are summoned, and then you just kind of have to use the Xi and V to kind of dial it in. When that happens, as I may have mentioned, like MMA, Durams just rock. It's because once they actually get to where they can summon the creativity on command, they can keep that creativity going, not just for little bursts, but they can just go creative on your ass, creative on your ass, creative on your ass till the time runs out. It's very, very difficult to deal with that.
And I think even sometimes Naiji might even go the route of like trying, like people might look at them and just be like, why do they even do that? Like there's certain things
that
they
do all the time. But that's part of the mystique that the Naiji have, because you fight them like they do weird things for weird reasons, and it does. It makes you not sure of how to.
You can't predict what they're going to do.
Predict them. Yeah.
Because and those people they tend to look at it
unexpected. In those situations, like
sometimes I look at some Naiji and I'm like, how is that ever gonna help you like doing this thing. Like I know that there's like this group of these guys that are like trying to learn how to fly or something, and they're like sitting down like with their legs crossed, and they like learn how to jump really high with their legs crossed. I was just thinking like, what is this? It's cool, it's amazing. It's like I've never seen that before, and it's like really amazing. But it's sort of like, like okay.
But initially at first, that's the thing is Niger unusual direct us that way, is that if that somehow puts us into an altered state, and I can see how it would. Just like I think that actually, the whirling dervishes, kind of thing, I think they swirl around, get a little dizzy in the head. That's not my preferred way to go into an altered state, but I can see how that could be appealing if you don't have another methodology you know is better to put you in an altered state. So a lot of times, Nige, you'll invent novel ways to get into these unique altered states or to do something that feels like something humans aren't supposed to or haven't felt before, like an approximation of flying, for example. Because it does, it can be very enlightening. I know it's one of the things I like about...
Yeah,
Go ahead.
teach you about something that seems like it's unrelated, but is actually really powerful. And then a lot of times I think that's why people don't understand, because they don't see that connection that person has made.
Right.
Yeah.
But you are right also that at that point it is not connected to the modulation side of it, so still just only momentum. So that is an issue. For example, like when the Durham sometimes do their more aggressive, flashy stuff, there's a point where that wasn't smart to do it. It wasn't.
Yeah,
good.
it loses a practical value to it. Right?
However, if you do artistic stuff you just feel like doing long enough, you get a very unique thing. You get practically...
I know what you're going to say. I know what you're kind of going as I'm laughing.
It's like if you try like a trick tennis shot and you
can get good at it to where you can depend on that.
That's it. You can dependably do that really bizarre, hard to do move.
And it's just unbeatable.
It's unbeatable, yeah. And so when Naiji eventually get to where they can do this like weird artistic thing, but they can dial it in, then like everyone's like, I have no defense for that. And generally, there can be like a whole tennis season. That's how it usually happens with grappling. People like Naiji invent new moves. Pretty much the whole season is killing everyone with it. Over the summer, people figure out what's going on, try to come up with antidotes for it. And then usually the good Naiji, by next season, they've been in their lab between seasons, and they've thought up new moves you've never seen before.
Yeah,
so it's pretty cool.
But there is an issue they can't dial it in,
yeah.
like you mentioned with the Phi Alpha, and then also for tennis, it's not as much the Phi Alpha as like the VXi and Xi-V.
Xi-V.
They have the more surgeon kind of. They'll just do the normal V and Xi stuff, steady game, and you're not.
Because they're Xi and V first. I think they take more pleasure in ergonomics.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of like an intellectual ergonomics of Z and Vi, and there's like a physical ergonomics.
That's a good point. Yeah, a lot of them will like overpower some of the Durams even.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, because I would think that they're like
also
really
just grind them out too.
Right, that too. Both of them.
Yeah.
Both happen.
Because I would think that they're like they tend to make their game very much like efficient with the Xi and like the V in terms of like how much energy you're actually using.
Yeah.
Or that's kind of like more to Xi, I think, but like you restrict. Yeah. There's like you don't want to do anything that you don't need to do. That's like I know
there's
that.
two things there. Yeah, there's the efficiency angle.
The Xi-V very much have that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's the efficiency, but there's also the V. It's important too, which is no. You're very right. The Xi.
I'm very curious to know what the V is actually. Yeah.
There's a pleasure in the ball.
Mm-hmm.
When you whack the ball correctly, it's like doing a double leg right. It just feels good. Now,
IG need to add some art to it to make it.
Yes, we can finish that to some degree, but there's a more artistic need. Otherwise, it's not just. But the Xi-V or V-Xi, they both move efficiently. The Xi and their V just enjoys that feeling of doing that.
You're absolutely right. And Nige get criticized for that of being too fancy.
Yeah.
Like Federer, like he needs to hit the ball like in a really pretty artistic way, or
Right.
he'll just lose. He has to do that.
Yeah, it is, and then also too is there's that, and related to that is in training, is that Naiji often get called brilliant, highly creative, things like that. But another thing that is often labeled them as well, it can go the other way once they dial it in. Prima donna, that's what he's talking about. The other one is flaky.
Flaky.
Which is if they're going against an opponent or a match or something that's interesting, they can do stuff no one can do, but they lack consistency. If they have to keep doing it, or they're doing like a person that's not very interesting to them, they have a hard time like summoning, basically inspired. It's part of being a prima donna. So there's a prima donna as far as like needing to like be sort of stylish with it. There's also the prima donna of I really am not motivated by this opponent.
Yeah.
this court doesn't move me.
All right, like Anderson Silva in that one fight where he was just kind of
lose
not
people who are
taking it
worse
seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because of it.
And then that can that's what it's like. I think that's
I've lost people before that I
needs
should
to
be
like understood.
for that reason.
Again, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I didn't hear the last bit of each Glenn and Mitchell. You said like a sentence.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying like there's. Oh man, I forgot.
Sorry.
Hold on, you go first, Mitchell.
I was saying anything important. I was just saying. I mean, I just relate to that. I mean, I've lost to people before who I should have beat just because maybe I didn't feel motivated enough or whatever. But I think the more mature Naiji get better at dealing with that.
They do, and I think what happens there a lot is this kind of spell you have to do, and there's a combination of how good you are at doing it and how conducive it is to do it at all.
Yeah. Or even if I don't lose to someone I should have beat, I'll take longer than I should to beat.
Right.
I've had that.
The simulator gives us our energy, and so a lot of times, Naiji will take the simulator and it'll be fantastical, and then it'll work itself into a tennis fantasy, and that'll work itself into the tennis world, and then that'll work itself into today's match. We kind of have to take a little time to get into that mode, because just hitting the ball is not necessarily interesting until you lock the simulator up with it. And I've seen Naiji do this in tennis. I've seen him do it pretty much every sport. They just are like asleep. And sometimes they can wake up while the match is still going. Other times they'll say afterwards, like, I don't know, I just wasn't there today.
And that's exactly right. That's a great
all athletes say it to some degree, but I know Naiji's seen us say it more than any other Mojo athletes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gene and I do it too. It's a little.
They do.
Yeah. But
Andre
there's
has been in a phase like that for a while.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, I felt that with the debate because I've been required to do like with the way that we debated, we were basically speed reading. That it was a really interesting, unique kind of debating where you weren't actually talking like a normal person. You were actually talking really fast, like this, as fast as you possibly could. And it was extremely exhausting. Both you had to listen and write down, take notes while that was going on, write down all of their arguments. If you dropped any of their arguments, you lose the round. So you need to answer every single one. So you need to keep up, have a really good ear, canvas, and think about what they're saying at an extremely fast pace, and be able to go up there right after that and respond to what they're saying at an extremely fast pace. So that was completely exhausting. So you need to do that kind of repetition. You need the kind of inspiration from your other basic.
Yeah.
You need to be artistic. So you got to find a way to do that, and there's ways you can do that even in those within those restrictions.
Yeah, it takes maturity and training.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what you're saying, Ben, is something that I actually find really interesting. It's sort of like Naiji. They need to kind of create or like see things from like a higher meaning. Like I'm doing this because it's going to like pull off this one other really big move that I'm trying to do, like I'm trying to make happen. Like it might seem like you're like I can sort of like see a connection there actually with what you're describing in terms of like you're trying to like speak really fast. I think actually a lot of your Act 2 muscles can be flexed in the process of doing something like that. So you could so you could think of it in terms of like, maybe this is kind of like not interesting in and of itself because the topic isn't interesting, but the principles that I'm learning here are actually transferable to other stuff, and that can be really enjoyable.
There's so many applications for it.
Very cool.
Yeah, there's so many applications, but there's actually, say, 3 general ones that you want to be able to do. And what you're talking about is what I'll say is the second one, the middle one, which is a formal kind of presentation ritual where you get time and they get time.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make sense? There's two other modes, and you need to be good at that. That's a very special way of being able to, like you said, put as much as you can that time, and then register everything they say with their time, and come back with rebuttals and so forth.
Yep.
There's two other forms that are equally important, and actually will probably come up more for us, ironically, because that middle one tends to be a bit more formal. The range that Naiji tend to excel at is actually the first and the third. The first range is what I'll call basically street range. And this is the hardest thing there is. There's nothing harder than street range. This is what I was used to growing up. And you'll notice that most people come from certain kind of backgrounds who are just naturally good at doing this, which is commanding the floor with your voice. And it's related to what you're doing, Ben, but it's different. That's why it's separate in that there are no turns. That is a critical difference in the game. As far as a bardic feat, the other person will also be speaking as fast as they can. Actually, there's two main differences. I would say there's no turns, and the list of illegal moves is small to non-existent.
Right. There are no rules, basically.
There are no rules. So you can talk about people's moms. You can do anything to make them laugh. You can actually try to make their girlfriend laugh if your joke's more than theirs. I mean, you can do whatever you want if it works. Obviously, there's issues of morality, but as far as the sport itself, there are no turns. So you are allowed to talk while they're talking, interrupt them, to just basically take control, and their job is try to wrest it back from you. And so you need to talk fast, loud, clear, provocatively, and with a lot of confidence, because they're going to talk too, and you actually have to make what you say just kind of blow through theirs. Now, at the most intense levels, which is what I'm used to both on Baltimore streets and with my family, is basically you just launch verbal assaults and you kind of just go at it until something stops it. But you just you show no weakness, and you just keep going with your strongest arguments.
Until you basically you win, right? You just win.
Yes, because what you are doing, and I don't want to sound like just wild and crazy and purposeless. No, what you're actually doing at a high level is you are exerting your life force. Mm-hmm. You're basically showing how confident you are, how much energy you're willing to spend, basically how ready to go you are.
How far you're willing to go as well.
How far you're willing to go, exactly. And so you basically just summon yourself and you proceed to just voice your best stuff and respond. Everything they say, you're like, boom, 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 I win. Boom, boom, I win. Boom, boom, and you just do that until it's time for someone to leave.
Or you, it can be actually very high if you beat the person and then they're like, I see the error of my ways, thank you.
It is, because that's a good point, because sometimes it's important in that second version that Ben's talking about that you are able to show I can receive stuff from my opponent in their time.
Yeah, and then respond
in my time. That's important to show that. In this version, the more close
street
style is you're actually showing a different kind of confidence, which is I don't need to listen to anything that you're saying because I have all these good arguments, and whenever you put an argument up, I'm going to already know what your argument is within a few of your words. I will tell you what you're saying before you finish your sentence. Yeah. That's a powerful thing to be able to do. And in the street, you're allowed to do that. If you start saying something, I've heard that shit before, I'll actually say what the sentence is before you finish it. I'll tell you what video clip you heard that dumb shit from, and I'll tell you why everyone knows that's fucking stupid.
And there's actually things you can do, like with debate. That's actually because there's a judge, right? I mean, that has to decide, who wins. And I guess I slightly misrepresented the rules a little bit because if you drop a point, you lose on that. They win on that point. Their argument pushes through and is correct. That argument. But along with what I'm saying, the judge has to decide who actually argued that point better and who should be given more weight in the round, and it has to fall one way or the other, 49-51. So that can really help, like that power of persuasion and that ability to swagger and really show how much you know about what they're saying.
Absolutely. For sure.
To
the difference is, like I said, is
persuade them to think that your position is coming from more
it's a
knowledgeable
different
place.
it's a different game.
right. There's critical. What you brought up, Ben, there's actually a critical difference, which is why Naiji tend to use the first stage and third stage more.
Yeah.
In the second stage that you're doing there are the turns. There is the illegal moves, things you're not allowed to say. And as we know from Naiji how we tend to do like provocateur stuff, anytime you start taking away like, controversial moves, that's going to come out of our toolkit first. The third one is that the judge is the referee. In the street style, that's not how it works.
Yeah, that's true.
The referee, actually, first of all, at Naiji, the core starts with you. If you feel that you actually defended yourself well and hold your head high, then you don't give a flying what they think, and you actually win. Your spirit said that you said the right things and you said it strong. But then beyond that, it's actually the crowd, and that's just animalistic, natural law. Did the crowd get moved by you? I don't care what the teacher said or the referee said. Did I actually move my opponent and/or the crowd? Yeah, in the street style, it's basically, did I impress my spirits in this order? Did I impress my spirits? Did I impress the crowd? Did I impress the opponent? That's kind of the order of it.
Yeah, I think it reminds me what you're saying a lot with like Eminem in that movie. What's it called? 8 Mile, yeah, where he has to do all the rapping. I never saw the movie, but I saw clips, and I think that's kind of like a lot of what you're getting at there.
It is, and actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because in that movie, you're actually seeing all three, or at least in his life. The actual challenge he has, which he wins, is actually the hardest for him because it's actually a stage 2. It's a rap battle where you're given minutes and the other one's given minutes back and forth. So you basically are rapping in a debate style.
Yeah.
And he wins. But that is very difficult because why? Who decides? The referee kind of decides, okay? Or it could be a loaded house decides. Now, they show him in the movie doing the other style, which is street style. And that's where you see how dangerous he is and why they're afraid of him. Is because without any turns, he's funnier. He's faster of thought. He's able to actually come up with things to say that are clever and meaningful before other people can. To the point that they try to intimidate him a lot of times. That's their attack to shut him up. But actually in just the exchanging of ideas, he's too quick. They have to take pauses or repeat themselves. He can actually keep going and come with new ways of saying what he's saying that are insightful and work well without repeating himself. And then we'll go to stage 3. Stage 3 is the complete opposite, but also Naiji really excel here. It's the open stage. In the open stage, there is no debater in a way, at least immediately. The debater element comes in through your critics. And so here, instead of like stage 1, where you have your debater and you are basically just talking at each other with no turns, you just get what you get. Here, you are completely given the floor to sink or swim on your own merits. Sometimes people need someone to actually go back and forth with to excel. A lot of people choke on stage where you just have to fill 5, 10, 20 minutes, an hour of just you. Do you mean? You need an opponent. You need something to exchange with. So to actually be able to go up on stage and just deliver your points on your own and be confident how it's going to sound, that's another kind of bardic feat. There's a lot of different ones. Those are 3 main fields of them. When you're delivering it with open contestation, stage 1. Number 2, you're doing it with ritualized contestation. And then third is you're doing it with delayed contestation, critics. Basically, they'll let you say your piece, and then they'll try to kill you in the critic column later.
Of course.
But they're not. But you will be facing that when you actually do your voicing. You'll face that after the voicing is over. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
But when you voice, you are dealing with contestation. I mean, voicing powers, they're articulation. I mean, but they're also contestation powers. They're both.
I can see why Naiji would not prefer the second one, which is kind of can feel a little bit claustrophobic in a way.
Yes.
There's so many different rules. There's so many different things, and it kind of seems like it's too it's too taking. It kind of feels like it's less natural law and more like this kind of fabrication,
Correct.
man-made thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Like the ritual aspects, like something being pre-prescribed different than how it could be if it was open, isn't really ideal. It'd be better if it was just open normally for.
Yeah.
Although I mean, they can really get into competing in particular sports and perform particular feats that way, or they can even really say really hard on that. But generally, if they're given the option, they would opt for having a more open.
Agreed. Yeah, because I think if you think of the Naiji power, when we like come onto a scene of any activity, motif, whatever situation, pretty much you want your Nai to be able to just abductive reasoning find whatever your spirits, your instincts tell you is the thing to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless if that point is something you're not allowed to talk about, that's stupid. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that may be the first thing I go to. Like, well, we don't talk about a person's family stuff. Well, no, that's the first thing I go for. By the way, growing in Baltimore is one of the reasons why I also have been so disclosing about my issues. I know how shit gets when it gets rough. So one thing you can do is, and by the way, he did an 8 Mile too. Remember? You saw the movie. One thing he did to his opponent is he basically took all the easy white boy jokes he was going to use and did them ahead of time and made it stupid. And then said, here, your turn. And he basically took the guy's routine before he did it and made fun of it. Because he already knew he was going to make a bunch of white boy jokes. So he actually just made fun of making fun of white boy jokes and then gave the guy the mic. So point is going at what is not, whatever is the most important thing, you can't be told that's off the limit. First thing is, what is it? Second is, so 1, 2, 3 for the way we work. You want to be able to move immediately. First, let me look at what I want to look for. As soon as I see what I want, a target is acquired, I'm like a fucking, any other predator. I go. You know what I mean? So as a predator, I want to be able, a hunter, I want to be able to sniff for what I want to sniff for. When I get the scent in my nose, I want to be able to strike. And then when I strike, and this is why debating is different, it's ritualized, I want to be able to strike continuously, non-stop, without any pushback from the other person until I win completely and utterly. That's the way hunters actually think. I look for certain targets, I go after that target, I stay on it till I close it. Giving a person a turn, that's like saying, okay, criminal, I have discovered your social security number. Now what would you like to do? You know what I mean? No.
Turn-based combat.
Not
real.
I'm going to keep taking that clue to the next clue to the next clue until I close you. If you don't take a turn, if you stay playing video games, not realize I'm on you, that's your problem. That's Street Bard. It's on. If you say that's the rule of Street Bard. If you bring up any topic and you take any opinion, it is on you to defend and advocate that point. If you cannot, it's on you. And that doesn't mean the judge actually has two things in a way. One, it's inhibiting. It's also a crutch. Because it gives you a chance to kind of breathe while they make the turns go a certain way. In street style, you have to make your own turns. The only turn is...
To be fair, there is still a lot of freedom and things you can do in that particular activity, but there are restrictions that are kind of annoying.
Right.
And
yeah, you have to be...
I think it's very important to actually have at least one or more stage 2 kind of rituals that you're good at. So I don't think they're actually unimportant or that you shouldn't do them. I just think that they tend to favor the other hunters a little more. Classic debating, like Vizy lawyers, I mean, that's a classic debate and really kind of favors them quite well. So the more legalistic it gets, it's favoring...
It's actually really interesting because, like, in the activity that I would do, traditionally, one team would bring a case about a policy issue.
Right.
However, what people sort of figured out is you can actually argue things from a philosophical standpoint without even talking about anything specific. You could actually talk about reforming the state of capitalism without mentioning any specific things you're going to do. So you could.
And it is very important, I think, for NIG's confidence, as I mentioned, that there is some kind of formalized exchanges that you do feel you can do, because it is a big confidence to know you can take, like you're saying, that conceptual way of thinking and use it in this venue and get wins. That's good to know.
Yeah,
but it's also important that you realize that is a challenge. You're challenging yourself to do it more difficult.
Yeah, it is more difficult, and it's funny because usually, I imagine there's a lot of NIG in there who are bringing all these kind of controversial type, because judges will have their own opinions about certain things, certain cases that are brought up, and if someone brings a case if one team argues argues for the affirmative should is going against transcendentalism, and then that's going to just destroy everything, right? That's really fueling for. Sorry, there's distracting things going on in the background.
Okay.
That's really fueling for NIG. Crap, I forgot where I was going. I got distracted.
Okay. I was smiling a little bit, but I was waiting to see where he was going to end up.
I feel like I have it.
I hate that.
Oh, right. Okay, that can be really empowering, but also it's also extremely difficult for them to answer. People don't really know how to answer those kind of perspectives. So it's extremely controversial, and judges will have negative opinions about it. But what will happen is because the other team won't have any way of actually making sense of it or canvassing it to the point that they'll be able to answer it, and then you'll win because they won't be able to respond.
Right.
So that's a lot of times they'll bring these completely obscure cases to the table, but the judges kind of have a really negative opinion about because they were so obscure and they were able to argue well enough that actually made sense, and they weren't. Then that's often how they just win. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, a lot of times with NIG, the battle for us is in the lab. For me, when I challenge the world on the data, and we get more well-known, more scientists are going to kind of disagree with us and take bigger high-level experiments to try to beat us. Really, it was the purification I had to get past. I don't say beat; it's more of a noble thing, but really, it's kind of like surfers in a wave. It's really about me in this wave. if you're NIG love doing this. If you surf a wave that everyone else is like, I'm not surfing that wave. That's insane. Then really, all you have to do is just beat that wave. You know what I mean? And you kind of, a lot of times NIG, they kind of win by just sort of separating from the rest of the tribe and figuring out, is there anything out here in the woods that no one's been able to do yet? And then just train they can do it. And if you're able to toss that cable or climb the mountain or ride that wave, then you come back to town, you do it, everyone else tries it, they fail, you win.
It's the feat, and it's the biggest and most important thing that there is. But then there's also the G part of it too, which is if the purifying is one thing, and then you have to also advocate and push the worldview and the idea into the world.
Oh, for
That's
sure.
a different kind of game.
It's a struggle, and you have to bring yourself all the time. You have to summon your passion for what you believe in. But if you believe in really smart stuff, that's
easier.
It makes the job a lot easier, especially because we're going against crazy odds, but we have natural law on our side. So they've got a lot of states of stupid against natural law. I'm picking natural law. They've only been around for 10,000 years at most. Natural law has been winning for a long time. Guys, with NIG, you have to figure out how to get natural law to back your play. And if you do, and everyone else doubts you, you're like, you want to bet? Because it's not a bet for you. You actually know that something they don't think can happen is actually going to happen.
Totally.
Oh, it's a 7:28. It's about perfect timing on that. Okay. Does anyone have anything before we sign off?
We're not going to stay for about another hour or so?
Unfortunately, I'd like to actually get maybe one edit in because today it took a little while before I got access, and so I only got one essay done, and I spent the rest of the time I kind of got involved with working on the TV timeline more. So I was adding more stuff, which is a feed I need to do anyway. So I kind of did that, and then I realized that a bunch of them now have access for me. So probably I'm going to stay home from the coffee shop and try to get at least one of those done before I call it.
Oh, how is the TV thing going, by the way?
Good question. So basically, I have 152 total I have got in my crosshairs. Okay, let me go levels. Okay, at one point, I tried this feat several times. At one point, I did a good canvassing, and I have a document that has like a lot of movies and TVs pulled out by year with the cast just listed, but nothing else done besides just list the names and the show by year. But it's a lot of legwork done. So I probably have in that list of movies and TV that I'm into, I think over 1,000. So there are over 1,000 cases for us to work on that. All right. Now, with that said, I have loaded 52 cases in these 152 cases in this collage I'm working on and working them, which means getting the cast all their mojos read. Of that, I did 112. With this extra 40 that I added, I'm trying to make a contiguous timeline. I'm motivating myself as a nice little thing I'm sending my dad, see if he likes it. He might not, but still it'll motivate me. I'm trying to think of a bunch of shows from 1940s all the way till now, one per year. That's how I added the other 40. So those have not been read, and that's something I'm doing now. And we would have worked on tonight if we wanted to get to that, but that's the plan for that. So once I have that, I'll basically have like a spine, and then I'll start adding all the shows you want to watch, all the shows anyone I meet out in the approaches. It's one of the ways I'm using to make friends is find out what shows they're into, and then I'm going to get it. But I believe that if I keep on it, probably we're going to have a library that most people we meet, they'll ask for like 50, 100 shows, and we'll already have probably like 90% of them. Make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, very, very exciting. And also on that, probably during the 13K, I like to do little mojo reading things as I'm purifying to help kind of stimulate my brain to do different purifications. So sometimes, like when I'm working on the 13K, for example, it'd be nice to actually start working on mocking up the 14K samples to help stimulate me to better purify the 13K. So as a part of that, I'll be doing more TV show timeline reads to help beef up our efforts towards the 14K while I'm doing the 13K purification. So lots of good stuff there. Oh, and so on that, if you guys have any TV shows I have not mentioned that you're into, please mention them. I want to have every TV show that you've ever actually watched and got into. I want to have that for you.
Oh, it could be any kind of TV show, cartoon,
well,
real life.
Live action. Although I do want to get into cartoons at some point, but we want to stay with the ones that have more famous people because the voice actors oftentimes don't have any video at all or even pictures.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, because actually I know some voice actors for the Clone Wars that do have video.
Yes, I know, exactly. As I'm saying, there are some, like I know there's like some of the Batman stuff, whatever, where actually most of the voice actors are all well-known, like Mark Hamill and whatnot. So, yes. But yeah,
I wish everyone would just like upload videos of this.
I know, make our life easier. But
that
right now, I think I can go into most TV shows fairly deep on the cast, going with limited media, and I'll even go so far as photos in a lot of them. So if anything you're into, let me know, and I'll try to get in there. All right. Cool. That was an awesome session. That's cool. I like that. Kind of just came with some topics and just kind of jammed on it. Felt good. Not quite sure how we list that for the viewer.
What, all the topics? Yeah, I know. We just kind of just...
We kind of just
covered it all.
But there was a theme. There was a theme. There was a theme in the beginning. What was it? Naiji Detective Team. Well, that gets sort of went off that.
Yeah, a bit.
Yeah, it kind of becomes its own thing after a certain point, in a way.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
That's the best conversation.
Basically, have several conversations which kind of continue on. They just drift in and out of whatever conversation we're currently having.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure we covered it all to some extent. So,
I think we did.
In a unique way that, I mean, everything we were saying was kind of related to all those topics. So it's like,
yeah.
I mean, it's, yeah.
They're all related by natural law.
Yes.
Okay. Have a wonderful evening, and I'm going to see if I can't get at least one more edit here.
Good luck. Have an awesome evening, everyone.
All right. Have a great evening, guys.